All right, Dark Page. So, this is one of those intensely character-focused ones, which I often mention these stories as examples of things I wouldn't want to do due to how heavily character-focused it is. But this is one that is weirdly a mix of positive and negative. And the way it does world building, while it's not something that I would personally consider to be something you would want to directly copy, the way it sets up world building is actually pretty good. I'll get back to that in a bit, because the meat and potatoes of this one is the plot, and there's a lot of that. So first I'm going to set the scene. All right, we have the Federation with a new member race called the Cairn. We know almost nothing about Cairn technology. They're a Federation member race, so presumably they are a warp-capable civilization, and so on and so forth. Interesting aspects of the Cairn is that they have something that is closer to a hive mind than most humanoids do. They do, in fact, have individual personalities and identities. It's just that the way they communicate telepathically means they don't need to speak the way most humanoids do. And that they just don't naturally have the ability to talk. Interesting idea. Like a humanoid race that is so fully telepathic that telepathy is their primary method of communication. Love it. Great idea. So we have a few members of the race. I think these are the only two we've ever seen. Oh wait, no. I don't think we see a picture from his wife. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Anyway, though, Maques and his daughter Hedril. And yeah, there's this weird thing where Lwaxana Troi imagines Hedril's face onto someone else's body, which we'll get to that later. Now, the specific logic of why Hedril was there is actually based on the fact that this wasn't a military conference. It was a thing working on improving the ability of the Cairn to communicate with members of other races. And that is part of why Hedril is here, is because Hedril is a child who is attempting to learn to communicate the way humans do. Because, as a child, you learn something, you learn it better than if you try it as an adult, blah, blah, blah. That sort of thing. So that's the logic of why Maques brought his daughter Hedril. Yeah, I'll get to that stuff later. Now, this is an interesting thing, is because, even as someone who first saw this as a teenager, I always thought Hedril's head appliances looked terrible. Maquez's actually look pretty good. Like the hair swoop feels reasonably natural. This looks like she has an appliance glued on over her hair in both angles. Honestly, that's an aspect of this that I would probably, chalk it up as a limitation in special effects and forget about it, and just try to figure out what it's supposed to look like instead of what the special effect actually looks like. Notably, Kirsten Dunst is not wearing those in this scene, because in this scene, it's Kirsten Dunst made up to look like a Betazoid. Yeah, the same Kirsten Dunst who would later go on to play Mary Jane in some of the Spider-Man movies. Anyway, Okay, so the Cairn are here as the aliens of the week, and they pop up for reasons that are. It's not first contact, but it is development of relations with a race that it's actually far past the first contact stage because like they're a Federation member, but it's a Federation member who recently became a member and has it fully integrated into Federation society. I'm not sure whose hands these are. Oh wait, I bet those are Lwaxana's hands. Yeah, I think those are Lwaxana's hands. Anyway, though, so this is one of the episodes that actually has as its primary focus as a character Lwaxana Troi, the mother of Deanna Troi. Now, this is one of several that she showed up in as a guest character, and quite frankly, she was a pretty good guest character. Having her be related to one of the actual main cast made things a little bit more interesting and all, but in a good way. I'll get into what the rest of that later because I can't really get into that now. Then we have Kestra Troi, not to be confused with her niece, I guess, Kestra Troi Riker, because yeah. Later on, Deanna names one of her children after her deceased sister. And yeah, also it's like the the main appearance for Kestra Troi was Adriana Weiner. And there's a few scenes where she's played by Kirsten Dunst instead, because, well, I'll get to that later. Honestly, there's actually very little to go on with her as a character because the fact that she was someone who was a child who was very, very much beloved by her parents, dies tragically, and then her parents get really, really sad about it. So much so they just like don't tell Deanna because they don't want to talk about it. So Deanna grows up thinking she didn't have an older sister. Yeah. Anyways, other things about this episode that are interesting before we get into like the main plot. This is one of the few episodes where we actually see what Betazed looks like. Because like this here is a part of Betazed. This is the what the area where Lwaxana lived looks like on Betazed. I think some of these other scenes with Kestra Troi uh, are meant to be Betazed. I think this is also area on Betazed. Because if I remember right, she's looking at where Kestra died. Or okay, this is a recreation in her memories of where Kestra died. Because this particular scene is like they don't physically go to Betazed. We have Deanna telepathically communicating with her mother. And so, yeah, time to get on with the dark secret. Now, in the behind the scenes commentary, they mentioned that the biggest issue they had writing this episode was figuring out what would be a dark secret that someone would want to keep hidden for decades. Uh, that would be soul crushing when it came out, but not make the person look like a criminal. And due to that, the episode went through multiple months of script rewrites before eventually getting into a state where they felt like they could mention it. or actually make the episode, I should say. Anyway, so yeah, the dark secret is that Lwaxana Troi has been hiding from Deanna that she had an older sister, and that her older sister uh, died tragically in a stupid accident, and that her parents just chose not to tell her. Thing is, though, is that Lwaxana has been hiding this from literally everyone as best she can. See, if you were to actually like go back in the official records, you would be able to find that Kestra exists. It's just that, actually, you know what? Some of the official records might have actually been sealed because Lwaxana wanted them to be sealed. But, anyways, as a dark secret goes, it's not particularly horrible. It's just one of those things. It's like the dark part of the dark secret is that she chose to keep it hidden, like to that level, where it's like pretending that Kestra just never existed. See, okay, so what's the actual main focus of the plot? The uh, Cairn aliens, Lwaxana, due to being someone who is a skilled telepath and someone who regularly uses telepathy with non-betazoids, uh, Lwaxana has been helping them with their attempts at learning to communicate with non-telepathic races. Thing is, being around Hedril reminds Lwaxana of Kestra. So Lwaxana has the whole dark secret start eating at her in a way it hasn't been eating at her for 20 years. Because every time she looks at Hedril, she has those old repressed memories stirring in her mind. And Maques knows it. See, Maques is a telepath, okay? The thing with Cairn telepathy is that Cairn think in pictures, and Cairn telepathy doesn't involve transmitting words to other people's minds. The Cairn would actually just transmit entire thoughts. Like, a Cairn is thinking about the schematic for a hyperspanner. So the Cairn chooses to telepathically communicate with you the picture of the hyperspanner. He just shoves the entire picture of the hyperspanner into your mind. That's just how Cairn telepathy works. It's like you get these giant blocks of telepathic information all at once, when some other forms of telepathy are more like transmitting signals with Morse code. Thing is, this also means that the Cairn, when they're scanning the minds of others, are actually quite good at picking up large chunks of information. And, that means if someone is thinking about their dark secrets, the Cairn will see what they're thinking about, not just hear what they're thinking about. So, see a picture of the lake where the child died, that sort of thing. And yeah, here we have stuff that's like pseudoscience about how Betazoid telepathy can go medically badly, and the telepath could die because their telepathic abilities are out of whack and stuff. I'll be honest, this aspect of things is kind of strange to me, and from a fictional science perspective, it works, especially when you consider that Lwaxana Troi had been interacting with Hedril for weeks or months by this point, and thus, um, this problem had been slowly building for the entire time that she had been interacting with Hedril. And the issue is that in order to do what she was doing with the card, she had to telepathically hide the dark secret from the card because of the fact that she would subconsciously think about, be reminded of it every time she saw Hedril, but she didn't want the Cairn to know. So um, she was basically like trying to telepathically partition off a section of her own mind. And that while short term, it's not really that big of a deal, it was slowly killing her. And that's like the core threat of the plot is that the medical staff have to figure out what's wrong with Lwaxana Troi before she dies. Anyway, though, the solution, of course, is the whole like mind meld thing, having um, Maques assist Deanna in um, exploring Deanna or exploring what Lwaxana had been hiding from Deanna. And then after Lwaxana stopped hiding it, uh, oh yeah, here's the thing. It's like Deanna decides she wants to look through her mother's personal journals and realizes there's like a 7 year long, approximately, section of the personal journals that are just gone. Like, wait, why would she do this? That doesn't sound normal. And it even has the section where Deanna was born missing, which is like, yeah, that doesn't look right. Anyway, though, but yeah, it's like the actual episode actually has a really cool scene because of the fact that they actually have like people like go to Betazed to look at to actually relive what happened when Kestra died. And they have this thing where they find out that there is actually a picture of Kestra that was still around somewhere. Anyways, yeah. I also like this whole like scene where Lwaxana is like trying to hide things. She hasn't decided to like fully just tell Deanna everything yet, and this is the reason why we have the version of the character that's kind of like a fusion of Hedril and Kestra, where it's actually Hedril. Like it's actually the same costume as Hedril, but with the Betazoid makeup, because the core of the problem and why Lwaxana is in such distress is the fact that Lwaxana has been getting Kestra and Hedril kind of stuck together in her mind, and she can't quite because of the fact that she's trying to hide things. She gets the two of them like mixed up in her memories, and the only way to fix that is to be honest about it for the first time in 20 plus years. Actually, how old is Deanna at this point? Like, I would think 30s or so. Yeah, 30s. Yeah, 30 years then. I mean, okay, so using this in an episode. or TTRPG. See, this goes really, really deep into backstories and stuff. Like that's the whole thing. It's like exploring backstories using a outside thing as a reason to look at it, and it's that backstory thing that makes it so interesting. Is that you have an external force that's causing you to do the backstories, and it's kind of like an excuse to explore backstories. Now, this is what I was saying earlier about how the actual specific mechanics of this is probably not what I would do. Because, like, you don't need to have the in-depth backstory explanation be this physically critical to the plot, where you have to figure it out if someone dies. That's a bit extreme. But, you know, that was also the reason why they went through so many script revisions for this episode, is that they wanted the dark secret to be something ridiculously extreme, but not be something that would make Lwaxana. Well, actually, the original draft actually had it being Beverly Crusher, and they just couldn't think of a way to make that one work. So then they decided to have it be Lwaxana instead. And yeah, but diving into the backstory of one of your players, you might not want to do that. You might want to do that. And this was actually something that the level of information it created was actually quite good. It's like it made Deanna Troi's, family slash backstory a lot more interesting. And also, because of the fact that it's an episode that involves Betazed as a planet, is notable in that regard because the fact that all of the dark secret stuff happened back on Betazed. So Betazed is kind of sort of by proxy being developed in this episode, which makes it even more interesting. Because it's not just the Lwaxana, it's also their homeworld. Good stuff, in my opinion, anyways. And anyways, though, yeah, I mentioned a lot about the Cairn as a race, and great race concept. The way they use them in this episode, you could have done other things, I suppose, possibly. But the again, it's like you don't need the Cairn to do this plot, but they worked quite nicely. And it's also a race that I would actually have liked to have seen elsewhere in other episodes, and sadly did not, because it's genuinely something that's a very good race concept. Heck, having Cairn as player characters would actually be quite good too. Anyways, with that, I believe I will see you later.